Hey there, welcome to the next episode of the Personal Branding for Professionals video podcast. As a part of the series, we spotlight powerful personal brands across the globe to inspire today's professionals. I'm your host, Ketaki Vaidya, and today's video is about content creation. When you set out to build your personal brand, content creation is one of the most important aspects to focus on. This is when you're establishing your credibility and showing people what you want to stand for. People are going to recognize you for the expertise that you create through your content. And this is where you create the emotional connection with your community. This is where you build your community. So all of the good things happen when you start putting out content that really makes a difference. And today we're going to talk about some ingredients that can help you create effective content and also help you find yourself through your content. Joining us today is James Hornick. He is a partner at HireWell, where he is specialized in the recruitment of marketing and technology professionals since 2005. He currently leads HireWell's business development and marketing efforts and has a passion for content creation. In his spare time, he likes to make fun of his friends on LinkedIn, and we'll get to that in a while. And he's also the primary host of the Talent Insights podcast. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ketaki, thanks for having me.
So, first of all, tell us about your journey. We see that you've written on LinkedIn that you like to make fun of your friends on LinkedIn in your free time, and we want to know more about it.
Yeah. So I guess how did I get here? It's actually interesting. So I guess there's kind of two parts I'd want to cover is like career-wise, what kind of led me to kind of do this, but also just like my background in making fun of my friends on the internet. So it's kind of two things that kind of converge. So I've been on the internet since, I guess I'll start with the more fun parts. I've been on the internet since, the mid 90s. And, like my whole experience with it is just, that's what all it was used for is like making friends and making fun of your friends. And you know what I mean? Like subtly, humorously trolling each other. Like I think the point of the internet's always been to have fun, right? So, and I think that in the personal branding space, if you want to call it that, or just the professional space and how people brand themselves, people everyone's like so stuffy, because they feel like they have to be something. I think they have to present some way. And it just comes off as like inauthentic. You know what I mean? Like everyone talks about how important it is to be authentic as they copy what everyone else is doing and try to talk in the most proper way possible and take the safest like routes and stuff. And like for me, it's always just been about like, I try to be who I am in person whenever I'm like on social media in whatever respect, you know what I mean? And I try, and I think that's one important thing too, we can kind of come back to later, is just that I think that you need to find a way to, you don't have to try to be funny. You don't have to try to be amusing. You don't have to try to be anything that you're not, but you have to try to be the same person you are in real life. You know what I mean? In your online persona, which is hard. And it's also scary sometimes too. But, for me, it's just that I've been, before social media, it was message boards. And then I got into Twitter and other kind of stuff like that. And just, it's for the longest time, it was just like having fun with my friends. And that's what I try to kind of continue with nowadays. So my career is just over 20 years at this point. So I roughly, but in 2004, 2005 is when I got into recruiting specifically. So that's kind of the field that I actually operate in. So I'm a partner at HireWell. When I joined the organization, we're a recruiting firm. We're based in Chicago. When I joined the organization, we were a tiny 4-person shop. We had all tech recruiting. But we expanded in a lot of different areas. And in 2015, we saw a big opportunity to get into digital marketing recruiting. At that time, there was some cool things happening in like the marketing landscape. So we had 3 or 4 clients that first year that had to build out digital departments from scratch. Like they had nobody. And it was interesting because it was, we had to get good at it really quick. And luckily it worked out really well. About 2 years ago, maybe, I was asked to be a speaker at the Chicago American Marketing Association event they had. It was for job seekers who were marketers, and giving kind of a presentation on like the status of like how digital's changed hiring and marketing. And they asked me, hey, can you help promote the event? Can you say something on LinkedIn? And at that point in time, I didn't really do anything on LinkedIn. Like, I used it as a recruiter, but I did not post anything on LinkedIn hardly ever. So I'm like, yeah, sure. And I saw this is right when video, like you could start doing it, but barely anybody did. Like a couple people did. You might see a couple videos a day, but it wasn't something anyone did. So I had to get my cell phone. I do a 30-second, hey, welcome, here's the show we're doing next week. Love to have you guys come out. We're gonna be talking about this and that, whatever. And I post it, and it gets like 8,000 views or something like that.
Wow.
And it was just a stupid video. You know what I mean? It was like nothing. And then I realized, wait, how many views do our blogs get? And how many views did this video I just posted get that wasn't even that good? And it makes you realize, okay, there's something else to this in terms of just kind of organic reach and everything else that we could be doing.
Yeah.
And from there, it just kind of evolved, like I started, I don't know, we can maybe get into that now if you want to, but like we started doing different types of videos, started doing podcasts, started recording the podcast, started integrating, started getting the team involved in different things. And it's evolved to a point today where we have like a series of shows with set topics, and, we'll do a lot of kind of panels with guest speakers, and everything gets converted to our Talent Insights podcast. And, but it just kind of happened. That's how we got here. And it's funny because like none of this was really planned per se, but it's been a great, I think it's important kind of tying it back to the personal space is it's more important, I think, to do this stuff as yourself personally than it is for your company.
Absolutely. That's quite a long and interesting journey. And it would be safe to say that you've explored all the branding aspects, both personally and professionally throughout your journey, right? So that's something, does that help you in any way when you brand yourself, or did you never intentionally try to brand yourself?
I don't think I've ever intentionally tried to I think you have to try different things and kind of see it's a mix of what's going to resonate with people and trying to understand what people are going to be interested in, which I actually have a couple of hacks for that, which I think are really important, but also like, what can you do repeatedly? What can you do consistently and show up every day? Because I think that's a challenge a lot of people have is they'll have some big ideas, but if you can only do it once or twice, or if it's too hard, or if it's too time consuming, then it's not something that's sustainable. So it's trying to figure out like what things you can start doing that can be repeated, that you enjoy doing, that are also going to kind of resonate with the audience that you're actually going after. So.
Absolutely. And I'm very intrigued about the first part that you talked about, where you said that we have to be authentic on when we share our content, and that's usually the most difficult thing to do. And we maintain this refined image on the internet that we are this, and we are so professional, and we are an expert in this field, and all of that is fine, but really pays off to be yourself. So how would you suggest that when someone is starting to create content, and initially it takes a lot of trial and errors to understand what is it that is resonating with your audience, but how would you suggest that they bring in the authenticity essence in that, which is really difficult to do, but everyone talks about it?
So here's one of the things we do, and I did not invent this. There's other people out there who do it, but it's kind of our go-to in terms of the types of content we create. A lot of the stuff we do is it's two people having a conversation like we're doing right now.
Okay.
And sometimes it's on a show, sometimes it's a conference call that I'm on, just hit the record button. If it's someone in your company, just record a call you might be having and just see what comes out, because you're going to talk like yourself when you're just having a normal conversation. You know what I mean? Like you're not hitting record because, okay, let's record this and try to say something great. You're just recording it and seeing where the conversation goes. And a lot of the time there's nothing there to use, but every once in a while there's gonna be something where you're just lost in the moment. You ended up stumbling upon something that resonates with people because you're just being yourself. You're being raw and completely unscripted. So so it comes down to just finding ways of doing unscripted content, I guess. Once you start doing that frequently, you become more comfortable in carrying that voice wherever else you go. Like once you'll start to feel more comfortable in yourself, like just whether it's your written things you do or anything else, just like having that tone of voice in all the other kind of communications that you have and all the other kind of stuff you put together that might not be scripted, but at least planned, which I think is two completely different things, which we can talk about too. So anyway.
Right. So in terms of the content creation, what are the trends that you've observed so far? What do you think works and what doesn't work when you are trying to put out your content there?
Where I would start is the idea of idea capture. And I think this is the hardest thing for everybody is what do I talk about and how do I find new things to talk about kind of consistently? Yeah. And that, I think that is the number one hardest thing for anybody, because that's why people stop, because they run out of things to discuss. So whatever your audience is, whatever your field is, if you're getting questions from people, like those are the things you need to kind of put front and center as the main things you want to discuss. And as long as you're having those, so get in the habit of whenever you're, whatever your business is, whenever you're talking with clients, find a way to either record or write down or whatever their questions are, because those are the things you should be, that's the thing, that's where you start. The second thing I would do is, I think it's important. So another trick that I like to do on LinkedIn or any other, whatever your social media channel is, there's probably 30 or 40 people I really enjoy their content. And I probably checked, I have all their URLs of their posting pages saved. And I use an app called TabSnap to open all 30 at a time. So it's one click. And I just like to see what they're talking about. And I'll try to join the discussion if I have an idea on it. If I don't, I just kind of move along. But a lot of the time you might have ideas or thoughts or perspectives buried in your head that other people are going to find valuable that you won't stumble across or think to communicate unless you're prompted to. So in this case, like if I see someone talking about a subject and I have a different take or different perspective on that subject, that's an idea that I probably wouldn't have just thought to like start talking about on my own because something else prompted me to do that. But that take in itself is a good chance that's something that other people are going to want to hear. So use other conversations you're having with people, either online or in person, as kind of reasons, as you stumble across new ideas or people ask you questions. Again, it's kind of the same concept to do that. The third thing I think is important too is always expanding your own knowledge base. And it doesn't even have to be in your field. I think it's probably more important it's not in your field. I think that people need more range in general and kind of ideas. And ever since the pandemic started, like I just to get out of the house, like I'll take a walk every day and listen to an audiobook. And, something related to business, but not recruiting, but something related. Like right now I'm listening to The Deficit Myth, which is a book about modern monetary theory and government spending, like nothing to do with what I do, right? And then I listen to Blue Ocean Strategies, which is the book about business and kind of creating new categories. I listened to the book called Range, which is why I had this idea in the first place. All great stuff. And having different ideas outside of your domain area and kind of learning about them, you'll start to be able to relate the things you do know about. It'll give you a different perspective, help you be able to articulate maybe a different level of things. Because like the more you can kind of learn about different things, it'll kind of open your eyes to other stuff that might be more specific to your area that you can hit on. So.
Right. And I want to root back to the second point that you mentioned about ideas. What happens is a lot of times we follow people whose content we resonate with, and then as a matter of looking at that content again and again, consciously what happens is you end up just simulating their writing style. It might not be the idea exactly, but you just think that, okay, this is the ideal content that I'm looking at, this is how I should write, and then you lose being yourself in your content again. That's one thing that happens which people don't even realize.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think it's a little, sometimes it's even more intentional than you think, because I think anytime someone starts out and they want to get into their personal brand, they go read a few blogs on what they should do. And it's just the same rehashed stuff. You should post certain times a day. You should you use a mix of memes and motivational quotes and it's all bad advice. Like none of this stuff is important. I think this is also, and I want to touch on this too. And I'm going to try to answer your question, but I'll try to probably in a different way. This is why I'm a believer that personal brand is important, but focusing on personal brand is not important. I think focusing on the content you create is important because, and the difference is, I think when people focus on how should I be seen or how should I sound, they start doing the things like that. Okay, I'm going to copy the style that someone else has because that seems to work. That's going to get clicks. That's going to get people to like it. But building your audience is important, but not as important as building the right audience or building loyalty with that audience or building interest within that audience. And if all you're doing is copying a style that you think works, or if you're copying the motivational quotes, it's like I define value as teaching somebody something they didn't already know. Or a different perspective they didn't already have. Because when you think about your favorite content creators, the reason why you keep going back to them is because you learn something new every time, or they amuse you every time. You know what I mean? Which is very different than someone who just says something motivational and then you tune them out. You know what I mean? So are you getting real followers who care, that are relevant, that are interesting, or are you racking up followers?
Yeah, I think people fall prey to these guidelines that are shared, right? That after every post you have to ask, do you agree? Or you have to ask a question to your readers. Guidelines, which I can see in everyone's content, that is diluted the entire content that I see on my feed. And it makes me really sad and disappointed that people don't want to be themselves, but yet they have all these posts about authenticity and branding and everything.
You just have to be better than that. And you have to not let it get in your head that like, some of your best material might not get a lot of engagement, might not get a lot of traction. And that doesn't mean it's not effective, which is the key thing.
Yeah.
Like how I know stuff is effective is when I end up talking to either job seekers or to potential companies, and they've mentioned they've seen my content and they mention they like it because, you know, you're actually going a level deeper, you know what I mean? Or you're actually talking about stuff that's relevant, or you're just kind of being funny, you know what I mean? And those are the types of, I think the feedback you need to look for is more, you know, qualitative versus quantitative, you know. And once you start like hearing from people that what you're doing is working, you know, you can't be worried about people who aren't your target not liking it, because who cares?
Like, and that also helps you build an emotional connection as opposed to an intellectual one, right? So if your content can do that, then there's no better metric than that to measure how well you're doing. But then there's another question that I have around this. Sometimes what happens is the field of our work is very different from the why of our personal brand. Okay, so for instance, in my case, I work in the data science domain, but I talk about personal branding in my free time.
Yeah.
So that's the why of my personal brand. So in that case, how do you think we can strategize our content such that we don't end up mixing the two aspects of our life, but yet we can still get it out there and get people to understand what makes us us?
You know, you have to do what you're passionate about. I think this is why a lot of people try this and they can't do it. And there's people sometimes feel, if it feels like you're obligated to keep going, you're talking about the wrong things. If you feel like this is such a chore, I don't like doing it, but I have to because it's my brand, like you're building the wrong brand, you know? And I think a lot of people fall into that, you know, and I can kind of like, I can talk about that kind of myself too. Like I enjoy recruiting and solving problems and hiring, but I also like just talking about like this type of stuff we're doing. Cause like, this is, I like helping other people out. Like I've had clients, these are recruiting clients, mind you, come to me and ask me about like, how do I start a podcast? And these are marketers ask me the question, which I find hysterical, by the way. So like, I enjoy helping people solve problems and kind of innovating. And it's the mix for me, it's the mixture of the two. Like I realize I should probably, if I was smart, I would only talk about recruiting and talk about solving hiring challenges, because that's who my core buyer audience is. But I get sick of it, you know? I do have a level of people, and it does kind of work for me on some level too, because like employer brand is what ties the two together. So that's a hiring related thing that's about kind of personal brand. So I kind of can bridge that gap a bit, but you just have to talk about if it's, like I said before, if it feels like it's a job, you're doing it wrong. And that's also, but I think that's kudos to you, because you're doing something you enjoy. And that's why you're able to keep going and keep doing it, and why you'll be successful at this, and because you like doing it. Like if you don't like doing a podcast, you shouldn't start a podcast. Absolutely. And because once you get started, there's so much work behind each and every episode that if you are not passionate about it, you will burn out and you will give up on all of that. And one day you will reach your limits. That's what drives me crazy about like all these like personal brand gurus that tell you have to do this and that, you know, and like, you don't have to be successful in life, you know, like it's a great way of going about it, but you have to enjoy it. So. Yeah, there's no specific guideline that you have to follow, or you don't have to go after something that has worked for everyone else. It might not work for you. You have to find yourself, not sounding cliche here, but you have to find yourself so that it becomes your passion and not an obligation, as you rightly said.
But then there is another thing that I want to know. What are the misconceptions that you've seen around content creation so far? With all the content that you see on LinkedIn or maybe any other platform for that matter, what are the biggest misconceptions that you've seen around content creation?
I think the biggest one that I run into is I hate to kind of come back to authenticity or anything else like that, but I think I can phrase this in a different way.
Okay.
There's an idea that let's talk about video content specifically, just to make it kind of more. There's still this idea where a lot of people want things to be so perfect. I think there's still this lingering idea that things have to be overly processed, overly perfect, overly has to be super professional video, but that stuff just doesn't play. And I think that it's so doing things in a way that are less than perfect is better because tying it back, it's more authentic. But anyway.
So tell us about some of the hacks that anyone can follow when they start posting content, because when you start, that's where you have to be really clear about what the theme of your content is going to be. If you want to follow a theme, what is the cadence of posting the content? So how does anyone make that decision, and how do they post effective content that resonates with people and they eventually get to that point where they are happy and satisfied with their content?
Okay. So a couple things I covered before was the idea capture idea. So rewind the podcast, listen to that part again, because that's critical. That's like the most important thing, is making sure you don't run out of ideas. Also the recording conversations, I think that is also pretty critical. Writing. So it's copywriting is critically important. And I'm not a copywriter by trade, but I think I've gotten better over the years, and reading books on copywriting will be incredible help. So titles are important. Titles are the most important thing. There's plenty of kind of things out there that will explain to you the best tricks in that kind of writing key titles. And by titles, I mean, if you're writing social posts, it's the first line, whatever that is, has to be something punchy. Right. Someone gave me a great tip where if you're trying to title a video or just title like their post or whatever it is, stream of consciousness, write down the first 10 titles that come to mind, play with the wording. Because a lot of times, like you kind of know what you want to say and you have a hard time getting the words out. But if you just make a few different iterations and force yourself to make 10 variations of the title, you'll figure it out. And whatever your end result will be way better than the first one or two ideas you had. That's nice. I mean, it only takes 5 minutes, but trust me, it works. And it'll make whatever kind of you lead with punchier every single time. There's an app in terms of writing. So I was notoriously like a long sentence writer. I think when you're writing humor, there's something humorous about run-on sentences that kind of like that are a little bit repetitive because you're doing it for effect. But when you're trying to make something very readable, it doesn't play well. Especially if you're doing something that's somewhat more serious or something kind of like so I had to learn how to write shorter, choppier sentences. And sometimes these are sentence fragments, but there's an app called Hemingway app. If you just Google Hemingway, I think it's Hemingway.app, which is amazing. It's just a website and you just copy and paste whatever you're going to write in there. And it just tells you when you're using unnecessary words, when your sentences are too long, and it just trains you to write in a much more choppier, more digestible fashion. So I suggest anybody out there who's listening, if writing is one of your things, and if you're struggling with it, or if you know you write too long, or just in general, if you just want to kind of punch up your social posts real quick before you put them out there, check out the Hemingway app. It's great. It's just a free thing. It's not even an app. They call it that, but it's just kind of a website. So that's another thing that I think is kind of key. I'm not big on reusing the exact same concept, but I do believe, I'm not a huge Gary Vee fan, but I will say his idea of doing long form content and then cutting into short form content is a goldmine. So for example, like this podcast right here, any podcast I do, there's probably, just reviewing it, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 things in there that'll be short clips that'll make great kind of ongoing content. Right. And there's zero chance without me doing a video podcast, I will be able to post on a daily basis. It just would be impossible. Yeah. But when you have, like, I've got a backlog of videos that on any given day that I love that I could just go back to, I just don't have the time to put them all up just from doing something that's more long form. So, I think if people, because that's the other thing I think people have a challenge with is, like, I don't believe you have to post every day. I like doing it because I look at it as like a writing exercise. You know what I mean? I like to make sure I write something every day. But I think it's insane if you adopt the concept, whatever you want your method to be, whether it's podcast or video webinars or whatever. But if you adopt doing something long form, you will have all the short form content you need to keep your personal content calendar full without even having to worry about it.
Yeah, these are some great tips, and I think you reach a point where you get exhausted with the ideas that you have in your mind, but again, you've given us tips for that too, that you can always look at these video backlogs, and all of that is, I think these are some great strategies that anyone can follow. And I think that covers all the questions that were coming to my mind with respect to content creation. Thank you for your time, James. And I think it was really good to not talk about authenticity and not talk about personal branding for a change, and talk about the underlying content creation that can lead you to building a great brand. So really nice.
I was going to say, if there's one thing I can plug, which you're actually part of, is the last thing I want to mention is what helps is talking to other content creators and other people because I believe that one of the things that's so hard about content creation is that most people had to learn how to do it on their own. You know, like you might be looking what other people do, but everyone's trying to figure it out. I created a Slack channel that is for people. I call it DIY content creators. So go to DIYcontentcreators.com. It's free. There's no sales pitch. It's just people.
I'm already a part of it.
Yeah, and you're on it. It's just people who like to ask questions, run ideas past each other, test out ideas. It's just like a free network for people who like aren't sure about if something would work or if people are going to like it or whatever else. And that's it. There's nothing else kind of associated with it. So, but if you go and sign up, I'll get you added. It's just a private kind of Slack channel. I add pretty much anybody. It's just, I have a sign up to make sure no bots are getting in or anything like that. But so check out DIYcontentcreators.com.
And I'll link it in the description below so that people don't have to go and type in those letters.
Yeah.
And I'll also link in your newsletter, which I've seen you keep posting about your newsletter on LinkedIn, so people can go and subscribe to your content. I'm so good. I'm going to promote your brand here.
I appreciate it. Talent, Rants, and Sarcasm is the name of the newsletter.
Yeah, and I'll also link your LinkedIn profile for everyone to go and check out your content, the way you comment on people's posts. It's really fun to watch, and it was really fun having you here talking about things that people don't usually share. But these are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have around personal branding. They don't understand how important content creation is and how important it is to be yourself in that content rather than just some professional or refined image that you keep maintaining on these online platforms. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching the video. Please let me know in the comments below if this helped you to get a better perspective on effective content creation, and what are some of the ingredients that you are going to put in your recipe for content creation going forward. Also, if you like the content, please subscribe to my channel. It will mean a lot to me. I'll see you next Monday. Till then, take care.